Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we take a whole stack of sources, we cut through all the noise, and we give you the essential knowledge you need to walk into any situation feeling, completely informed.
Exactly.
And today we are doing a really critical deep dive into something that I think dictates professional success just as much as your technical skill.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking about the unwritten rules of professional English communication and corporate etiquette. It's about the specific language choices that separate, I guess, the fluent amateur from the corporate master.
It's such a brilliant topic because the sources we've pulled together today are, frankly, essential. They don't just teach you grammar.
No.
They teach you relational intelligence. I mean, just think about the sheer volume of digital dialogue we all process every single day.
It's overwhelming.
Our time is fragmented, efficiency is prized, and, the real challenge is finding those practical, specific phrases that let you communicate clearly, efficiently, and with diplomacy. We've all seen it.
Oh, yeah.
Perfectly competent people who just stall their careers because their communication style, it just causes this accidental friction.
Or ambiguity. I think that's the perfect way to frame it. This isn't just about sounding correct. It's about signaling competence and respect, instantly. So our mission today is to distill these high-level conventions. Everything from how you manage your daily agenda and prioritize your messages to the delicate phrasing you need for a critical email request or even that moment of professional dissent in a meeting. We're essentially giving you, the listener, a shortcut.
A total shortcut. These sources cover everything you need to gain that social fluency in a corporate environment. We're moving way beyond basic English and into the specific professional code.
Right.
The language that establishes both authority and, at the same time, approachability. We really want you to walk away with clear, actionable strategies so you're always perceived as a valuable, thoughtful contributor who, respects the time of their colleagues.
Okay, let's unpack this right away. I want to start with the right frame of mind because how you approach your day really informs every single piece of communication that follows.
100%.
So the sources, they open by modeling this highly productive, systematic mindset. It's not simply about being busy.
No, not at all.
It's about acknowledging the demands of the work, the long hours, the complex tasks, but then immediately reframing it as something engaging. It's an optimistic perspective, even when you're tackling something that, required burning the midnight oil.
And that systematic approach is really the backbone of successful professional execution. The sources break down the start of the day into these clear, distinct tasks, which you can almost use as a blueprint for your own task management.
Okay.
It starts with acknowledging the load for sure, but then organizing it immediately.
So let's detail those initial tasks because they really do set the structure for the day. First up, there's triage the inbox.
Triage, as we know, it's a medical term for quickly sorting and prioritizing. And using it in a business context, it sort of elevates the task.
Right.
It signifies you're not just reading emails, you're actively categorizing them based on urgency and importance. You're deciding what needs an immediate response, what can wait an hour, what needs to be delegated.
So if you aren't triaging, your inbox is basically running you.
Your inbox is running you, exactly.
And that's followed by critique the new project proposal, that's pure analytical work. It's not just doing, it's thinking.
Yes. Applying critical thought. It signals that a professional is expected to be an intellectual resource, ready to provide thoughtful feedback, not just, process data. This task demands you read with a purpose, looking for flaws, opportunities, strategic alignment.
And only after that, after the triage and the critique, do we move into the execution phase, draft responses and compile the necessary data.
And this is where our communication focus really kicks in. You need the right language to effectively draft those responses, which we'll get into. And you need to coordinate compiling data without creating, any ambiguity for the people who are going to be helping you.
A systematic approach. Plan before you execute.
Minimizes friction every time.
I think the attitude that goes with this systematic approach is it's almost more important than the list itself. The sources note how the professional finds fascinating industry terminology even after an all-nighter.
Yeah, that little detail is so revealing.
It shows resilience, right, and intellectual engagement. It means you're framing your work as a challenge you're eager to conquer, not just some chore you resent.
That mindset is absolutely crucial because it affects the culture around you. In these high-stakes environments, a positive, systematic attitude, it just signals that you are in control. Even when the pressure is on, it implies self-efficacy.
And this brings us to one of the most, I think, fascinating cultural artifacts in corporate communication, the corporate paradox. That classic, immediate professional response when someone asks, "How are you?" is always busy but good.
It is truly the universal truth for the modern professional. And it's a masterclass in social signaling. We really have to analyze why this phrase is so sticky and why, frankly, you should probably adopt it.
Yeah, why not just say, "I'm good," or on the other end, "I'm swamped"?
Well, if you just say, "I am good," it might imply you have excess capacity, which in some competitive environments can be seen as a negative.
Right, like you're not being challenged enough or you're not contributing enough.
Exactly. But if you say, "I'm swamped," you just sound like you're complaining.
Eh.
Or worse, that you've lost control of your schedule, which is a major professional faux pas.
So busy but good is the sweet spot.
It's the perfect intermediate phrase. It performs three critical functions all at once. First, it signals competence and diligence. You are busy because you are valuable. You're in demand. You're actively contributing.
It also manages expectations. It subtly tells the other person, "Look, I am operating at capacity, so if there's a slight delay in my response, well, that's the understandable context. You've proactively given a small, polite reason for your workload pressure."
And third, and this is the psychological key, it acts as a verbal firewall. The "but good" part closes the door on deeper personal inquiries. It satisfies the need for a social pleasantry without inviting a time-consuming conversation about why you're so busy.
It keeps the interaction productive.
And respectful of both your time.
So it avoids the appearance of slackness, and it avoids the appearance of complaint. It's competence signaled without complaint. That is a powerful little tool, especially in a hybrid or remote world where you don't always have those nonverbal cues to see what someone's bandwidth is like.
And this efficiency, this respect for time, it leads us directly to the foundational principle of all professional communication.
Which is
clarity is paramount.
The sources are so explicit on this, warning that convoluted sentences often lead to misinterpretation. Why is misinterpretation so damaging in a business context? I mean, can't we just ask for clarification later?
Because every unnecessary clarification is a drag on efficiency and, frankly, a potential risk. Ambiguity leads to delays, rework, or, worst of all, misunderstandings that impact financial outcomes or client relationships.
So if I send you a request that takes you 5 minutes to decode...
You've wasted 5 minutes of my time.
Yeah.
And you've signaled that your own communication skills are, well, a little sloppy.
I remember sending an email years ago with a request that was a bit too vague about a deadline. I just said, "soon." The response I got back was, "Soon relative to what?"
Ah, perfect.
That's when I realized that efficiency and clarity are they're inseparable.
That's a perfect illustration. In business, vagueness is inefficiency. Whether it's written or verbal, you have to ensure your message is received clearly the first time. This principle of clarity, efficiency, and crucially, respect for the recipient's time. That is the guiding force behind every single rule we're about to discuss for building an email.
Okay, let's move to the practical mechanisms. The email. It's the daily workhorse of the corporate world. We have to look at the start and the end, the salutation and the sign-off, and how they really define the entire relationship in the message.
Absolutely. The choice of formality in that salutation has to be perfectly tailored to the relationship. The sources break it down into a really clear continuum.
Okay.
For most modern internal corporate communication, you should be adopting the semi-formal collegiate approach.
And that means the standard, slightly familiar hi name or hello name. The source calls this striking the necessary balance between approachability and professionalism.
Right. It's friendly enough for colleagues you see or message daily, but it's still respectful.
So when do we need to escalate that formality?
If you're writing to someone you don't know, a senior executive or an external client you don't have an established relationship with, you must shift to formal distancing.
And that's where dear name comes in.
That's Dear Mr. Smith or Dear Ms. Lee. It's that initial contact when you're soliciting a superior or just when maximum deference is required. It signals the seriousness of the communication and respect for their position.
And what if you get it wrong? Say you use dear for an internal colleague you talk to every day.
It just creates this unnecessary distance. They might wonder if they did something wrong or why you've suddenly gone all formal on them. Tone matching is absolutely key.
Okay, this brings us to a really critical piece of advice on handling the unknown recipient. The old school templates, dear sir or madam or to whom it may concern, they're still floating around, but the sources are emphatic that these are just relics.
They're worse than relics. They're indicators of intellectual laziness.
Wow, okay.
The modern corporate world expects personalization. Using dear sir or madam signals that you sent the email without caring who received it, or that you made zero effort to research the right contact. I mean, why would someone prioritize responding to an email that suggests the sender didn't bother to learn their name?
I'm going to challenge that slightly. What if you truly have no way to find the name? You're sending an inquiry to a generic department email like info@company, and there's no public directory. Is there an acceptable generic alternative that's less harsh?
That's a fair point, a valid edge case. If all your research avenues fail, the best advice is usually to address the role or the team rather than using that archaic gendered salutation.
So something like
hello marketing team or to the accounts payable department. It's still less impersonal than to whom it may concern. But the fundamental rule, it still remains.
Yeah.
Always try to research first.
Noted. Personalization signals respect. Okay, so once we have the salutation, we move to the soft opening. The sources use a great, very specific linguistic term here, phatic expressions.
A phatic expression is just a fancy way of saying social lubricant.
Okay.
It's the pleasantry or the fluff at the start of the email that doesn't really convey factual information, but it serves a vital social function, breaking the ice and establishing goodwill.
But why do we need that lubrication? Can't we just jump straight to the point?
Because direct, factual communication without any social preamble can feel, well, cold, demanding, or even aggressive, especially in English-speaking cultures which really value politeness and a bit of indirectness. The phatic expression allows you to acknowledge the recipient's humanity before you make a demand on their time.
Right. So the staples are helpful. I hope this email finds you well, or I hope you are doing well. But the sources also gave a more specific, productive-sounding one.
Yes. I hope you're having a productive week. This is subtly brilliant because it's polite, but it also reinforces the professional context. It signals respect while subtly reminding the recipient that you are both focused on productivity.
It's setting the stage.
It frames the entire message that follows.
Okay, so once the core message is delivered, we need a strong close. Let's review the sign-offs.
Again, we're just following that spectrum of formality.
Mm-hmm.
For internal familiar correspondence, the quick back and forth with your core team, the sources note that thanks suffices.
So thanks.
It's quick, it's efficient, and everyone understands it as a professional closing.
But if you need to elevate that, especially for external clients or senior management, what are the superior choices?
For those external or formal contexts, we strongly recommend kind regards. It just strikes the perfect professional tone, not too stiff, but definitely respectful. Best regards is also a completely acceptable option. They occupy almost the same diplomatic space.
So we should probably avoid the overly casual sign-offs like cheers or see ya, unless the rapport is extremely well established.
Exactly. Stick to the regards family for most formal situations. A consistently formal sign-off, it just reinforces the respectful distance or seriousness you established in the salutation. It maintains a polished, consistent tone from start to finish. And that is the hallmark of professional communication.
Okay, this is, I think, the most critical section for anyone who feels their direct requests sometimes cause a bit of friction. We're moving into the actual mechanism of asking for something without sounding like you're ordering a subordinate around.
This is where we confront the danger of the imperative mood. In many languages, a direct command is simply the expected way to ask for action.
Sure.
But in English corporate culture, direct commands like send me the file or check this report are often perceived as demanding, abrasive, or even rude.
Why is that? Why is the imperative mood so offensive in this specific setting? If I'm the manager, aren't I entitled to ask directly?
You are entitled to ask for action, yes, but the professional code emphasizes collaboration over command. The imperative mood implies this stark, non-negotiable hierarchy and, frankly, zero regard for the recipient's workload or their agency. Even if you are a manager, the goal is to foster willingness and engagement, not reluctant compliance. You want your colleagues to want to help you, not feel bullied into it.
That distinction is key willingness versus reluctant compliance. Okay, so how do we shift the tone?
The absolute gold standard for achieving this diplomacy is the heavy use of modal verbs. Specifically, could and would. These are your most effective diplomatic tools for turning a demand into a polite, collaborative inquiry.
Let's break down the mechanics of that. I'm thinking about a common request. Send me the sales figures. How does a modal verb change that emotionally for the person receiving it?
Well, by saying, could you please forward the sales figures, you have completely changed the nature of the communication. The word could asks about capability. Is it possible for you to do this?
Ah, okay.
It introduces this subtle hypothetical distance, which allows the recipient agency and the psychological option to say no. Even though professionally they probably have to say yes, it signals that you respect their ability to manage their own tasks.
That makes sense. And would is even softer, right? It focuses more on personal willingness.
Correct. Using would, as in, would you mind sending the document? It shifts the focus to the recipient's potential inconvenience. It shows consideration. I recognize this may be disruptive, but would you be willing to do it? This level of courtesy is really prized in corporate English.
I love that analogy. You're transforming a transactional demand into a collaborative request. So if I want someone to look over a 20-page document, instead of barking, check this report, the preferred phrasing is something like, would you mind taking a look at this report when you have a moment?
That is the optimal phrase. The inclusion of when you have a moment adds an extra layer of deference, acknowledging that their time is valuable. Even if you still need the task done pretty quickly, you're prioritizing the relationship alongside the task.
Okay, I have to challenge this, though. If we're aiming for maximum efficiency and the sources say clarity is paramount, isn't there a risk of sounding too passive or even a bit childlike if we overuse could and would? Where do you draw the line for strong management or, time-sensitive demands?
That's a crucial question. Over-softening, using 5 different polite words in one short request can indeed sound convoluted or even insincere. The balance lies in adding one key modal verb, could or would plus please, and then being very specific about the outcome.
So an example.
Instead of, could you possibly, perhaps, maybe, if you have time, send me the file, stick to, could you please forward the file by end of day today? The firmness of the deadline balances the politeness of the modal verb. You are being polite, but you are not being ambiguous about the required action or the timeline.
That makes perfect sense. The firmness is communicated through the timeline, not the initial verb.
Let's look at that case study. Softening the edges from the sources again. The blunt draft was, hi, Lisa, send sales report today. Thanks, Emma.
Yeah, it's efficient, but it reads like a sticky note or a text message to a very close friend, not a colleague.
And the corrected version. Hi, Lisa, could you possibly forward the sales report to me today? The difference is night and day. The revision feels more collegiate, as the sources noted.
Why collegiate? What does that really mean here?
It feels collegiate because it suggests Emma sees Lisa as a peer and a collaborator, not just a resource handler. The shift is instantaneous when you use that indirect question. The practical lesson for you, the listener, is that professional English prioritizes respect and relationship. If you sacrifice courtesy for brevity, you risk creating subtle, unnecessary friction that will degrade team morale over time.
Okay, let's expand on that with another example. What about scheduling? Instead of the very blunt, tell me when you are free, how should we phrase that politely?
You should use modal verbs to offer options and defer the final choice to them. Something like, could you let me know what your availability looks like next week?
Okay.
Or even better, would you mind if I sent over a few proposed times for our meeting? This frames your proactive scheduling as if you're seeking permission, which is highly diplomatic.
So in every professional interaction, the goal is to remove friction, enhance clarity, and signal respect for the other person's time and their agency.
That's the core of it, yes.
Moving on to more advanced correspondence now. These are tasks that require a lot of precision and very careful tone management. Things like responding to authority and handling the dreaded chase email.
Yes. Let's start with responding to management. The source gave a perfect managerial email example. Team, please review the attached report and provide your feedback by close of business. Regards, David.
That email is a model of corporate communication from a manager. It's brief, it's unambiguous, and he uses please, even though it is a directive. The professionalism is maintained through that clarity and the strict timeline by close of business.
And the perfect rejoinder example from the sources is just as disciplined. Hi, David. Thank you for circulating the report. I will review the contents and submit my feedback shortly.
It's the gold standard response.
It is.
But why is it so perfect? It seems so simple.
The simplicity is key, but notice how it covers all the bases. It acknowledges the receipt and validates the sender's effort. Thank you for circulating.
Right.
It clearly commits to the action. I will review the contents. And it provides a soft, professional timeline and submit my feedback shortly. It's accountable, professional, and incredibly efficient.
It just sets the manager at ease instantly. They know the task has been received and it's been prioritized.
Now for the true test of diplomacy. Drafting the polite nudge, or what's often called the chase email. When you haven't received a reply, and you need that information, how do you follow up without making the other person defensive?
That is the most difficult email to write. I usually write 5 different drafts, delete all of them, and then I end up sending one that's a bit too aggressive because I'm stressed about the deadline.
Persistence without aggression. That's the goal. The sources provide fantastic graduated language for this. We can break it into 3 levels. Level 1 is the standard nudge. This is your first, very gentle reminder.
And the phrasing for that.
The phrasing provided is excellent. Hi, name. Just following up on my previous correspondence from date. Could you please provide an update at your earliest convenience?
That specific phrase, at your earliest convenience, is so effective. It respects their workload while subtly prompting action. And mentioning the date of the prior email is good practice too. It saves them the effort of searching for it.
It frames the request as facilitating progress, not demanding compliance. It gives them maximum deference. But what happens if they ignore that and now the situation is getting a little tense?
We move to level 2.
Time-sensitive escalation. This requires linking your request directly to a project dependency. You are now justifying the urgency.
Okay, so what does that sound like?
The sources advise something like, Hi, name. I wanted to ensure you had a chance to review my previous email. We require this data by date to proceed with the next phase of the X project.
Notice the shift there. You're no longer focused on their convenience. You are focused on the project's requirement. You're framing their lack of response as a roadblock to a shared organizational goal.
It's polite, it's concise, and it's firm. Crucially, you're shifting the responsibility from a personal favor to a project dependency. You're giving them the context that the project is literally halted without their data, which forces them to prioritize. It's non-aggressive leverage.
Now, what if the deadline passes and you still haven't received anything? The sources didn't explicitly cover this, but we need language for a level 3, the final, firm reminder.
Okay, level 3 has to be firm but still professional. It usually involves an indication that you might have to escalate or that you've reached a critical point. You might write something like, Hi, name. As the deadline for the X project is date, and we are still missing the figures requested on date, I need to confirm if you will be able to provide this data today. If not, could you please advise who I should contact to ensure we meet the project timeline?
That's brilliant. You're still using a modal verb, could you please advise, but the implied consequence of them not replying is the explicit threat of contacting their superior. But it's done politely.
It's the highest level of diplomatic pressure. You're saying, I understand you might be too busy, so please guide me to the person who can help us avoid missing this deadline. You're asking for a solution, not demanding they comply.
Okay, let's move to the physical act of sending the documents. The sources corrected the common non-native phrasing. I send you the file. What is the universally accepted standard phrasing for attachments?
We must use the standard phrasing for attachments. The preferred language is formal and efficient. You should use, please find attached the report, or the slightly more contemporary, I have attached the file for your reference.
Right.
The word attached is the specific terminology that's expected in professional correspondence.
And why is please find attached still so common it feels a little verbose?
Because it is completely unambiguous. It immediately tells the recipient that the file exists and is present within that digital correspondence, so it prevents them from searching or scrolling. It just meets the expectation for efficient document delivery.
So, to bring this all together, let's re-examine that final synthesized email example from the sources. It really is a perfect roadmap. Hi, Anna, I trust you are well. Please find attached the revised quarterly report. Could you kindly review it? Best regards, John.
That short paragraph has it all. The semi-formal salutation, the emphatic expression, standard attachment phrasing, the diplomatic modal verb request, and a formal sign-off.
Right.
If you can integrate those 5 elements consistently, your written correspondence will immediately signal polish and expertise.
So we've established the foundation for written success, but now we have to move into the verbal arena. And a lot of learners, especially those whose native language isn't English, they feel this acute anxiety when they have to transition from the safety of a meticulously drafted email to spontaneous, informal settings, like the water cooler.
That anxiety is completely understandable. The pace is faster, and there's no backspace button. But the sources provide reassurance here. Clarity and demeanor are way more important than perfect grammar. You need to focus on building comfort through repetition. As we noted earlier, exposure breeds confidence. You simply have to practice.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. Initiating the conversation. What are the safest, lowest stakes openers for small talk?
The conversation needs to be universally accessible and non-intrusive. The topics should be external to the person or just simple general inquiries. The sources recommend the classics. How was your weekend?
A good one.
Did you catch the match last night? I mean, if you know they follow sports. Or the general and innocuous, how is your day unfolding?
Those are excellent social bridges. They require minimal mental effort to answer, and they keep the stakes very low. But what if the learner finds themselves just responding abruptly with good? That feels too short. It kills the conversation.
It is acceptable, but yes, it stops the conversation cold. To sustain the interaction and sound more natural, you have to expand the response, even just a little. Use varied answers. Pretty good, thanks. Not too bad, all things considered. Or, when you're feeling a bit pressured, the ever-reliable, busy but good.
It's the ultimate pivot. It gives just enough information to satisfy the social requirement and signals you're ready to move on.
Now here's where conversational mastery really begins. Sustaining the conversation through reciprocity. Small talk is fundamentally a verbal ping-pong game. If you only answer, you force the other person to carry all the conversational weight, which is socially taxing.
So after you answer, you must return the question to maintain that natural cadence.
Exactly. And the reciprocal questions are so simple, yet they're vital. And yourself, or how about you? This signals engagement, politeness, and encourages the other person to share. If you're a learner, mastering this reciprocal structure is almost more important than your initial answer.
And if you want to extend the conversation past the pleasantries, what's the safest path to take?
You use the small talk as a bridge back to professional matters. This is a very common technique in corporate culture. After you answer, you can pivot. I had a great weekend, thank you. I'm currently tackling the new budget report. What are you focused on this morning?
That transition is seamless. You satisfy the social requirement and then gently guide the conversation back to productivity, which is, the underlying purpose of your shared environment.
Now, let's talk about the guaranteed safe harbor of observation. If you're stuck, or you just don't know the person very well, observing a shared external fact is a failsafe.
And the universally accepted pastime is meteorology.
Talking about the weather. Precisely.
The weather.
The weather is the ultimate neutral ground. Phrases like, "Hi, quite chilly today, isn't it? I didn't expect the rain." Or even, "Hi, the office is really buzzing this morning, isn't it?"
Why does that work so well?
It works because it requires no complex response and no prior personal knowledge. It allows you to acknowledge the other person and initiate contact without any risk. It's a low-effort way to establish that you are friendly and approachable.
Let's focus on the art of listening here for a second, because sustaining the conversation is often more about listening than speaking. If someone says, "My weekend was hectic, I had to run around finding a new school for my son," a good response isn't just, "That sounds busy."
No. A great response uses active listening. It reflects their words back and shows genuine curiosity. You might say, "Oh, finding a new school is always stressful. How is the search going? Are you looking for anything specific?"
Right.
You're moving the conversation from a one-off statement to a sustained exchange. You are using open-ended questions, questions that can't be answered with a simple yes or no, to keep the dialogue flowing.
That is such a critical skill. Using the details they offer you to formulate a follow-up question. If they say they watched the game, don't just say, "Cool." Ask, which moment in the fourth quarter surprised you the most?
It shows you heard them, and you're interested in their subjective experience, which builds rapport infinitely faster than just generic validation.
Okay, finally, in these informal settings, you inevitably need an exit strategy that isn't the hard stop we're going to discuss for meetings. How do you leave small talk gracefully?
You have to signal the transition back to work, but gracefully. You can use phrases like, "Well, I should probably let you get back to that report," or "I need to go grab my coffee before David starts asking for those figures. Great chatting with you."
So you are framing your departure as a necessary return to productivity, not a personal rejection of the conversation. That feels very polite and very corporate.
Let's run that quick simulated scenario analysis from the sources one last time just to embed the cadence. "Hi, John. How's your morning treating you so far?"
And the response is, "Reasonably well. Just finished triaging my emails. And yours."
The final line, "Hectic, but managing. I need to dive into that new proposal now, but catch you later."
That short exchange, acknowledging status, reciprocating, and then smoothly exiting, that is the conversational rhythm you should be aiming for. So if small talk is the warm-up, then meeting participation is the high-stakes main event. This is where every contribution demonstrates your command of the subject and your diplomatic skill in navigating group dynamics.
Yes, and we need essential language for formal meeting participation. The environment is structured, so your contributions have to be structured too. We can start with the opening and taking the floor.
When commencing, the chair sets the tone. They'll use formal greetings like, "Good morning, everyone," or the ubiquitous idiom, "Let's get the ball rolling."
And that idiom signals that the preliminaries are over. The serious agenda items are starting now.
Okay, so when you need to take the floor to present some data or introduce a new idea, your language has to be concise and sophisticated. You have to avoid that rambling preamble.
Yes, you should use phrases like, "Today, I'd like to address," or "I have an update regarding."
So for instance, rather than saying, "I'm going to talk about the project now," the more professional phrasing is, "I have an update regarding the project trajectory and the potential risks ahead."
Exactly. It uses sophisticated vocabulary like trajectory and potential risks, which immediately establishes you as someone who thinks strategically.
Now, in any collaborative setting, you need the right language for concurring versus dissenting. Agreeing is easy, but disagreement, that requires maximum diplomacy.
For agreement, we must move beyond the simple, "I agree." Elevate your vocabulary. Use phrases like, "I second that," which is often used formally to show support for a specific motion or an action item.
Okay.
Or to validate the quality of the point, you can use, "That's a valid point." If you want to show that you've thought about it before aligning, you could say, "I'm inclined to agree with John's assessment."
Why is that last one so effective?
It signals that you have processed the information and have reached the same conclusion independently. It's not just blind agreement.
Got it. Now for the real tightrope walk. Dissenting. You can't just say, "I disagree, your idea is flawed." That is professionally damaging.
This is the moment to deploy your full diplomatic arsenal. You must always use phrases that acknowledge and validate your colleague before you introduce the challenge. This maintains professional harmony and respects the contributor.
The sources provide that perfect two-part structure. "I see your point, however," or "I understand your perspective, but I believe we should also consider."
The first clause, "I see your point," is the necessary verbal handshake. It proves you listened, you respected their contribution, you understood the idea. The second clause gently pivots the discussion to your alternative viewpoint. The rule here is absolute. Always challenge the idea, never the person.
And what if the disagreement is significant? Do we need even stronger diplomatic phrasing to avoid a confrontation?
If the difference is vast, you could soften it even further by phrasing your dissent as if you're seeking more information or exploring a parallel path. For example, "That approach has strong merits, but have we fully explored the possibility of alternative A, given the current market constraints?"
So you're challenging the idea by asking a strategic question, rather than just issuing a direct counterstatement.
Exactly.
Okay, next, let's tackle the fear of looking incompetent. When a complex point is made, there's a tendency to just nod along, even if you don't understand. The sources advise that seeking clarity is actually a sign of engagement, not of weakness.
Oh, it's so important. Falsely agreeing to a complex point can lead to catastrophic errors later on. You have to interject professionally. If someone uses an acronym you don't know, you have to ask immediately.
How would you phrase that?
"Apologies, could you elaborate on that acronym for those of us who haven't encountered it yet?" You phrase it as a request for the group, not just for yourself.
Smart. What if they are simply speaking too fast or using really dense industry terminology?
Use specific polite phrases. "Apologies, could you please speak a little more slowly?" Or to address the terminology. That's a fascinating term, new term. Could you just clarify the operational definition you're using for that?
You're framing the request as a desire for precision and deeper understanding, which is a positive professional trait. Rather than just admitting you missed a point, you signal engagement.
And finally, the meeting inevitable. Needing to leave early. The sources are clear. The casual, "I have to go," is just too abrupt and unprofessional.
So we need the corporate exit strategy. This is where the term hard stop becomes essential, right?
Indeed. The most professional alternatives are, "Apologies, I have a hard stop for another engagement," or, "Sorry, I must step out for a prior commitment."
The term hard stop is crucial because it communicates that your time is fixed due to an external, non-negotiable scheduling constraint. It justifies your early departure without needing to elaborate on personal reasons.
It's highly efficient, polite, and universally understood corporate code. It just prevents lingering questions and demonstrates respect for the time that was allotted for the meeting while signaling that you are responsible for managing your calendar efficiently. Hashtag outro.
We have covered so much essential ground today. We've moved systematically from setting the tone with that busy but good paradox all the way through the structure of polished emails, and finally into the high-stakes verbal exchanges required for meeting diplomacy and small talk fluency. We've really armed you with the language of relational intelligence.
The overarching takeaway, I think, across all these modes of communication is that professional English is not about transactional bluntness. It's about diplomatic nuance.
Right.
It is the consistent shift from that direct imperative language to courteous collegiate phrasing, achieved primarily through incorporating those critical modal verbs, could and would, and prioritizing clarity and politeness above everything else.
Mastering this code is about so much more than just getting the task done. It's about mastering professional social dynamics and signaling your reliability and your respect.
And we talked about how the confidence you seek comes from application, from using these phrases until they become second nature. So, for our final provocative thought for you to carry forward this week, identify one communication habit. Maybe it's one of those blunt imperative requests in an email, or maybe it's your tendency to just say, I disagree in a meeting and systematically replace it starting today.
Turn that imperative into a could you please?
Or next time you challenge a point, start with that diplomatic opener, I see your point, however. Turning learned etiquette into applied, immediate skill is how you truly master the corporate code. Okay, let's unpack this. We have an extraordinary stack of notes today.
We really do.
It's a meticulously compiled guide to professional correspondence and workplace etiquette.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't just about learning English. It's about decoding the social and professional expectations that govern modern corporate life.
Right.
It is essentially a shortcut to mastering the very specific lingua franca of the corporate world.
That's a brilliant way to frame it. Our mission today is to take these comprehensive guidelines, which cover everything from email sign-offs to, meeting interruptions,
Everything.
and distill them into actionable, high-value insights. We are absolutely looking for the gold standard in workplace communication.
The gold standard. I like that.
And this level of polish isn't just a nicety. It's an immediate signal of competence and, frankly, respect for the recipient's time.
I agree completely. It's not just about getting your meaning across. It's about controlling the perception you create.
The perception, yes.
If you can communicate with precision and polish, you inherently sound more knowledgeable, more reliable, and ultimately, more competent.
Totally.
It's a foundational skill set for rapid professional advancement.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the urgency of mastering this is really rooted in efficiency.
How so?
Well, we live in an age of information overload. We all do.
Oh, absolutely.
When correspondence is ambiguous or too casual or abrasive or just poorly structured, it forces the recipient to spend extra cognitive energy just deciphering the intent.
Right, trying to figure out what they actually want.
Exactly. That wastes time, it creates friction, and it can lead to some really damaging misinterpretations.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, mastering diplomatic clarity is, at its core, a major productivity hack.
A diplomatic productivity hack.
Oh.
Fantastic. Let's start where most professional interactions begin and are recorded.
The inbox.
The inbox. We're diving straight into the 3 essential elements of a professional email, analyzing how slight changes in vocabulary can signal dramatically different levels of formality.
Okay, so we need to analyze the entire spectrum of formality here, starting with, the industry default, which really sets the foundation for daily communications.
The sources confirm that for routine, high-volume communications, the emails you send most frequently to your colleagues, direct reports, internal teams.
The everyday stuff.
The everyday stuff, yeah. The ideal balance is the approachable standard, hi name or hello name.
Right.
This suggests accessibility and teamwork without dipping into, overly casual territory.
That high name standard is absolutely crucial because it acknowledges the individual while maintaining a professional boundary.
That's a good way to put it.
It's an acknowledgement of their humanity, but also a commitment to efficiency. It says, we're working collaboratively, and I respect your time by getting straight to the point.
Clean.
Functional.
It is. It's clean, functional, and it fosters a collegial atmosphere. It's the default for a reason.
With team cultures vary wildly, right? Let's say you start a new job in a very laid-back tech company where everyone is on a first-name basis, regardless of rank.
Does that internal culture override the formality rules.
That's an excellent point that highlights the necessary flexibility of this so-called gold standard.
Okay.
The general rules are the foundation, but the team culture acts as the modifier. If the CEO routinely emails you with, "Hi, your name," then mirroring that level of familiarity is often appropriate and expected.
So you sort of match the energy.
You match the energy. However, when in doubt, especially during the first few weeks, it is always safer to slightly over-formalize your communication.
Right. Better to be a little too formal than way too casual.
Always. You can always relax the tone later, but it's very hard to retroactively introduce formality once you've been too casual from the start.
That brings us squarely to the more formal reserve, the use of dear. Why is dear still necessary, and when exactly do we pull it out?
Dear is the signal of respectful distance. It is inherently hierarchical or external facing.
Okay.
Our notes stipulate that you should reserve this for specific, higher stakes contexts where you need to project utmost professionalism.
So what does that mean in practice?
We're talking about initial outreach to a new external client, addressing a direct superior, especially in very traditional industries like finance or law.
Right, the buttoned-up environments.
Exactly. Or when sending a high-gravity message, like a formal letter of complaint or a resignation. For instance, "Dear Mr. Smith," or "Dear Mrs. Lee."
So hi signals that familiarity is present or, desired, while dear intentionally creates a formal boundary.
Precisely.
It's often to signal the gravity of the communication or to reflect a clear vertical hierarchy.
It's a conscious choice, a choice about signaling your position relative to the recipient and the subject matter.
So if you are communicating upward or outward in a high-stakes scenario, the slight formality of dear acts as a kind of protective linguistic barrier.
A barrier, yes. It minimizes the risk of being perceived as too casual or disrespectful. It's the safest superior choice in ambiguous formal situations.
Okay.
But we need to spend time on what we must actively eliminate.
The archaisms. Those phrases that, while technically polite, just create enormous friction in a modern office.
Yes. The sources caution very strongly against outdated and impersonal phrases, particularly when the recipient is unknown.
What are we talking about here?
We're talking about "Dear Sir" or "Madam" or "To whom it may concern."
Yeah.
These phrases might seem polite on the surface, rooted in old business correspondence, but in 21st century corporate settings, they don't say polite.
Well,
They scream mass email or impersonal boilerplate, or worse, "I couldn't be bothered to research who I was emailing."
I can just imagine a manager receiving 30 emails a week that all start with "to whom it may concern."
Right.
The immediate friction created by that lack of personalization must be enormous. It signals a lack of effort and an expectation that the recipient will do the work for the sender.
That's the key insight. The friction is real. So what is the preferred strategy if you genuinely don't know the recipient's name? Say, for a blind general inquiry or contacting a massive organization.
The sources are pretty uncompromising here. The preferred strategy is always to conduct research.
Always.
A quick look at a company directory, a website's contact page, or even LinkedIn can usually reveal the correct recipient or the head of the specific department you need. The goal is always personalization.
And if, despite diligent research, the name remains elusive,
Then the gold standard dictates you address the role or the department, which is still vastly superior to the impersonal archaisms.
right? So give me an example.
For example, "Dear marketing team," "Dear human resources coordinator," or "Attention, client services."
This at least targets the communication specifically, showing competence and diligence.
Okay, so once we've nailed the salutation, we move to a concept that, if you skip it, instantly makes an email feel cold.
The phatic expression.
The phatic expression. This is the conversational preamble that often feels like filler, but it's actually essential social architecture.
It is the social lubricant, as the source notes aptly put it, and its function is purely relational.
So it's not about the content, it's about the connection.
Precisely. The phatic expression is a necessary social pleasantry designed to break the ice and acknowledge the relationship before you transition directly into the business objective.
Right.
Skipping this step, it violates an unspoken social contract, making the email feel abrupt and demanding. We are, biologically wired to acknowledge one another before demanding something.
So if I start an email simply with, "Hi, Anna, I need the project timeline by 3 p.m., I've gone straight to the transactional element
Yep.
without that necessary social transition.
Yeah.
It feels like an imposition.
Exactly. The human element is missing. It's too purely functional. So we need the staples, the phrases that are functional, entirely safe, and universally understood as professional courtesy.
What are the best examples that you found?
The most common and functional examples detailed are, I hope this email finds you well, or the slightly more conversational, I hope you are doing well.
The class.
They are benign, universally accepted, and they signal that you view the recipient as a human being with a life, not just a resource for your tasks. But we can expand this. Depending on the context, we can add a little flavor.
Like connecting it to a previous interaction, perhaps?
Precisely. If you just met them, you could say, it was great meeting you yesterday at the conference, or following up on our conversation this morning.
Okay.
If you know they just returned from a public holiday, you can use, I hope you had a restful holiday weekend. These phrases deepen the connection beyond the generic, yet they remain perfectly professional.
I see. So it's not about genuinely probing into their personal health.
No, not at all.
It's about observing the required professional ritual to set a collegial tone. It makes the subsequent request easier to receive.
Correct. It mitigates the transactional nature of the request. And for you, the listener, preparing for communication quickly, the goal is always to synthesize these components into a flawless opening structure.
Let's break down that synthesis. What does the perfect smooth opening look like, combining everything from the salutation to the phatic expression and finally the objective?
It follows a very strict cadence. Salutation first, then the phatic expression, followed immediately by the objective.
Okay, give me an example.
For instance, hi, Anna. I hope you're having a productive week. I'm writing to inquire about the project timeline.
Simple, clean.
Or for a formal client. Dear Mrs. Lee, I trust this communication finds you well. I am submitting the draft proposal for your review. The flow is seamless and transitions naturally from social acknowledgement to the purpose of the communication.
That structure feels entirely natural. It mirrors how we would speak if we walked up to someone's desk.
Right.
You wouldn't just launch the demand. You'd offer a brief, polite preamble to gauge their receptiveness. It's conversational mirroring transferred to the written word.
Now for the final piece of the structural puzzle, this sign-off. Like the salutation, this is heavily dependent on context and relationship.
And for internal communication with most colleagues, the sources suggest that thanks is the sufficient default. It works well because it's quick, it implies gratitude for the time taken to read the email, and it signals efficiency. It's almost a functional replacement for a full concluding sentence.
Thanks is efficient and accepted in a high-speed internal environment. It acknowledges that the recipient will likely need to perform an action or give their attention.
Right.
However, there are nuances even here. If you're sending rapid-fire emails back and forth, say 5 and 10 minutes, you can often drop the phatic expression and the sign-off entirely.
Oh, interesting.
Provided the internal relationship is strong, of course. Efficiency dictates that the correspondence becomes almost chat-like.
That's a great piece of nuance. The rule is flexible based on the rapid nature of the exchange. But when we move back to formal or external contexts, we need to reintroduce that formality.
Absolutely. When professionalism must be projected outward, we upgrade. This is where kind regards or best regards come in.
Which one is superior? Or are they interchangeable?
Our analysis highlights kind regards as a superior, slightly more formal choice for external contexts, especially when dealing with clients, executives, or formal vendors.
Okay, so kind regards is top tier.
It is. Best regards is also a very strong professional option, perhaps sitting slightly more neutrally. If you are ever unsure, a simple, unadorned regards acts as an excellent, efficient middle ground.
A middle ground, okay.
It's more professional than thanks, but less weighty than kind regards.
Let me try to distill this hierarchy for the listener.
Go for it.
We have the internal default, thanks.
Yeah.
The efficient neutral ground, regards.
Correct.
And the high formality external choice, kind regards.
That is a perfect, actionable summary. It's all about matching the closing's level of formality to the gravity and external nature of the communication itself.
Makes sense.
One final point. Be cautious with closings like, sincerely. While technically correct, it's often reserved for actual legal letters or physical correspondence these days.
So it sounds a bit dated in an email.
It can sound slightly antiquated, yes, unless you are in an incredibly traditional corporate environment.
All right, moving on from structure, let's address the most crucial element of action. How to get what you need without sounding like you're barking orders. This section is about using precise diplomatic language to ensure requests are always courteous and efficient.
This is truly the most critical section for anyone seeking that gold standard. It addresses a fundamental pitfall in professional communication, the imperative mood.
Tell us why the imperative phrases like, send me the file, check this report, or confirm the meeting time is so poorly received, even when the sender is just trying to be brief.
The imperative mood is a command. It's a direct order.
Right.
While grammatically efficient, it is socially abrasive and demanding in a collaborative workplace. It immediately triggers a feeling of subservience or annoyance in the recipient.
Even if that wasn't the intention.
Especially if it wasn't the intention. It is the language of a direct superior addressing a subordinate. And even then, in modern workplaces, it is often softened. Using it implies a lack of respect for the colleague's autonomy and time.
It's interesting how language, independent of intent, dictates perception. So we need a diplomatic solution, and our notes point directly to the essential tool. Modal verbs.
Modal verbs are your essential diplomatic arsenal. Introducing could, would, or might immediately transforms the request.
No.
They convert a command into an indirect question, which gives the recipient social room to maneuver. Even if the answer is inevitably yes, the phrasing shows courtesy.
Let's run through some contrast examples from the source material, because this shift in framing is paramount.
The contrast is dramatic. Instead of the blunt, send me the file.
Yeah.
The gold standard is, could you please forward the file? Or rather than check this report by Friday, we use, would you mind reviewing the document and letting me know your thoughts by Friday?
The inclusion of please alongside the modal verb is what truly seals the deal.
It absolutely does.
It makes the request cooperative, almost collaborative.
Absolutely. The combination of the modal verb, could or would, and the word please is the key to collegiate courtesy. Now, let's explore the ultra-polite versions.
Oh.
The ones you might use when asking a massive favor or speaking to an extremely high-ranking person. You can introduce a softer modal construction.
Like what?
Like, I wonder if you might be able to find the time to review this, or I would be grateful if you could assist with this.
Wow, that phrasing completely removes the demanding element. But what if the request is genuinely urgent? Say, the server crashed, and I need a fix in the next 5 minutes.
Right.
Does urgency excuse the imperative?
Urgency requires clarity, but not necessarily rudeness. Even in an emergency, you maintain the modal structure.
Yeah.
You just add the urgency context immediately after the polite request, instead of fix a server now.
Which sounds very aggressive.
Very. You say, could you please look into the server issue immediately? We are completely down, and I need a resolution in the next 5 minutes.
I see.
The could you please still opens the interaction courteously, and the justification, we are completely down, provides the necessary context for the urgency. The gold standard maintains politeness even under pressure.
That is a critical distinction. The application is universal. Indirect questions using could you please are the key to a courteous tone in virtually every request you make in the workplace. Okay, staying in the email environment, let's address the necessary mechanics of referencing files, starting with the right nomenclature for attachments.
Yes.
This is where many non-native speakers use constructions that, while understandable, don't sound entirely polished.
The source material establishes a very clear standard here. We need to avoid less sophisticated phrasing like, I send you the file, or the file is herewith.
Right, those are often direct translations.
They are, and they translate literally from other languages, but are not idiomatic in business English.
The standard is simple, direct, and efficient.
Exactly. The standard polished phrases are, please find attached the report, which is the formal, classic default.
The old reliable.
Or the slightly more modern and direct, I have attached the file for your reference. A third strong option is, the requested document is attached below.
What's the key word there?
Using attached confirms that the document is already there, eliminating unnecessary back and forth about whether they received the file.
Now, let's flip the perspective and analyze the communication coming from the top down. How does a professional recipient respond to managerial brevity?
Managerial communication is often characterized by extreme clarity and conciseness, sometimes bordering on bluntness.
Why is that?
Because efficiency and time scarcity are king at that level. An email might read, team, please review the attached report and provide your critical feedback by close of business Friday.
Brief, unambiguous, and entirely task-focused.
Exactly.
So, as the recipient, how do we craft an appropriate rejoinder? We need to acknowledge the task, confirm understanding, and establish our own efficiency without adding unnecessary fluff.
The response should mirror the manager's efficiency while maintaining the necessary courtesy. A perfect rejoinder would be, "Thank you for circulating the report. I will review the contents and submit my feedback shortly."
Or even shorter.
Or slightly more specifically, "Understood. I will provide my feedback by EOD Friday."
The key takeaway here seems to be that clarity is paramount, and efficiency is genuinely appreciated.
It is.
A manager does not need a full paragraph explaining your process. They need confirmation that the task has been received and understood, and that the deadline will be met.
And what if you cannot meet the deadline? This is where diplomacy is absolutely essential.
Okay.
You must proactively manage expectations, not wait until the deadline passes. You respond immediately.
With what?
"Thank you for circulating this. Due to prior commitments, I foresee a slight delay. Would it be acceptable to submit my feedback by Monday morning?"
Using a modal verb again.
Yes, you use would to seek permission rather than announcing a failure, which keeps the dialogue open and professional.
Now we tackle the unavoidable task that requires the most diplomatic finesse.
Oh, yes.
The follow-up, or what the sources expertly term the chase email.
This is a critical balancing act. We need the communication to be persistent because the task needs to move forward, but it must never, ever be aggressive.
Because that risks damaging the professional relationship.
It does. We need to be firm without being confrontational.
Let's define the goal. The primary goal of the standard follow-up is facilitation, not confrontation.
Right?
We're assuming the delay is an oversight, not intentional malice.
Exactly. We start with the gentle nudge, typically 2 to 3 days after the initial email.
Okay, what does that sound like?
The excellent non-aggressive phrasing detailed in our notes sets the perfect tone. "Just following up on my previous correspondence, could you please provide an update at your earliest convenience?"
That works so well because it uses that core diplomatic tool, "could you please," and it frames the delay as maybe just an oversight.
Just following up.
Yeah, just following up rather than accusing them of neglect. It's very low pressure.
It gives them the benefit of the doubt and subtly reintroduces the request. Now, let's move to the second stage. Functional urgency.
Functional urgency, I like that.
If 2 more days pass, we need to transition from general check-in to providing context on why we need the response.
This is the slight escalation strategy. We're adding context while maintaining courtesy.
Right. You transition from a general request for an update to stating the functional need.
And that would be phrased how?
You might say, "I wanted to ensure you had a chance to review my previous email concerning the Q3 budget report. We require this data by specific date to finalize the presentation for the steering committee."
Notice how the phrase, "I want to ensure you had a chance to review," maintains politeness. But the stated need, "we require this data," clearly explains the consequence of further delay.
That shifts the focus from a personal imposition to a shared requirement for organizational progress. You are holding them accountable to a process, not to you personally.
Okay, so what if that still doesn't work?
Finally, if the matter is highly critical and the deadline is fast approaching, we can use the technique of passive escalation.
What's that?
This involves introducing a shared accountability mechanism, often by CCing a relevant third party.
The subtle introduction of a manager or a stakeholder to signal the importance. But how do we do that gracefully in the text?
You address the original recipient, but use the CC line, and in the body, you reference the consequence. You might write, "Hi name. As we approach the deadline for project milestone, I'm bringing manager's name into this thread to ensure they are aware of the timeline requirements.
Right.
We still need specific item by 5 p.m. today to prevent a delay to the launch. This is firm, professional, and puts the accountability clearly on the required action, while the CC ensures visibility without an aggressive tone."
This all boils down to that mantra that the sources reinforce. Polite, concise, yet firm.
That's it.
It's a communication style that allows you to be both highly demanding of results and highly respectful of your colleague.
We shift now from the controlled, structured environment of the written word to the spontaneous, often unnerving realm of informal dialogue.
Water cooler chat.
Mastering water cooler chat. This is where many professionals, especially those focused on rapid language acquisition, feel the most apprehension because there's no time to self-correct.
Absolutely. The stakes might seem lower than in a formal email, but small talk dictates how quickly you integrate into the corporate culture.
It really does.
It is the gatekeeper to building informal rapport, which often precedes formal collaboration.
To tackle this, let's start with the safe harbor topics. The conversation starters that are universally accepted, non-intrusive, and require minimal risk.
The staples are deeply ingrained in professional culture because they are low stakes and require minimal cognitive load. We rely on time and location.
Give me some examples.
How was your weekend? Did you catch the local sports team match last night? Or simply, how is your day unfolding?
These invite a brief, easy response and crucially signal availability for a short interaction.
We have to also address the topics that are the opposite of safe harbor, the ones that should be avoided at all costs in initial professional small talk.
A hard rule in professional environments is to avoid the 3 Ps, politics, personal finances, and polarizing social issues.
Right.
Also, avoid intrusive personal health questions or detailed complaints about one's current workload. The goal of small talk is bonding, not vulnerability or debate. You want to stay on the surface of shared experiences.
And the most classic, universally accepted safe harbor of all, noted in our sources, is meteorology.
The weather.
The weather.
Yes, discussing the weather is a global pastime for a reason. It's neutral and relatable, but there's a nuance here that separates the awkward interaction from the smooth one.
What's that?
If you simply say hi, the interaction is over. The source recommends adding a single observation to your greeting to help avoid abruptness.
Like transforming a simple good morning into
Hi, quite chilly today, isn't it? I'm ready for spring.
Exactly. That single external observation provides a non-threatening hook. It signals that you are open to a 30-second interaction, which is the exact goal of water cooler chat, rather than just walking past.
It's an invitation to acknowledge mutual reality.
So, once initiated, we face the core challenge: responding and sustaining the conversation.
Right.
The notes indicate that a simple good in response to how are you is acceptable, but for a more robust interaction, we should expand slightly.
For sure. Expanding shows engagement and energy. You can use phrases like, pretty good, thanks for asking, or not too bad, just working through a heavy inbox.
But there's one phrase that truly defines modern corporate life.
The universal truth for the modern professional.
The classic corporate paradox.
The immortal busy but good.
Easy but good.
That phrase is brilliant because it fulfills 2 primary social functions simultaneously. It is simultaneously truthful, everyone is busy.
Yeah.
And reassuring. The but good confirms that you are handling the workload and are not about to dump a complaint onto your colleague. It encapsulates the working professional's life perfectly and requires no follow-up.
That psychological safety is why it's so powerful. It closes the conversation loop on a positive note.
No.
But let's provide some alternatives for variety.
Absolutely. For internal dialogue, you can rotate through. Swamped, but happy to be tackling Project X. Productive, thanks. Slammed, but managing well. Or the slightly more casual, keeping busy.
The key is always ending on a positive or neutral affirmation.
Always.
So we've responded positively. Now the momentum needs to be sustained. We can't just stand there sipping coffee awkwardly after we've confirmed our busy status.
The principle of reciprocity is key here, and it is a non-negotiable social ritual. You must turn the focus back to the colleague.
How do you do that?
Simple questions like, and yourself, or how about you, are crucial for sustaining the flow and signaling courtesy. If you fail to ask back, you have signaled that the interaction is complete, and that can feel quite abrupt.
And if we want to gracefully pivot from the social pleasantry to actual work matters, this is the moment to move from small talk to task talk.
This is where the pivot comes in, and it mirrors the natural cadence of a native speaker. You transition by connecting your status to your current work focus, then asking about theirs.
Give me an example of that.
For example, I'm pretty good, thanks. I'm spending the morning finalizing the Q4 budget. How about you? What's on your plate today?
That's truly masterful. You satisfy the social requirement, confirm your state, and then immediately transition into the shared professional context in one smooth sequence.
Polite and highly productive.
This brings us to a crucial point of psychological comfort. We know many learners feel intense apprehension about speaking up in these informal settings, fearing a grammatical slip-up.
That apprehension is entirely normal, but the biggest takeaway from our sources is that confidence is not a prerequisite. It is a result of exposure.
You don't get better by waiting until you're perfect.
No, you get better by trying, failing slightly, and continuing to engage.
That's the core advice. The priority should always be clarity and confident demeanor, rather than obsessing over grammatical perfection.
Exactly. A clear, slightly hesitant sentence is always better than a perfectly grammatical sentence that is delivered with overwhelming anxiety or low volume. We often call this the mental clarity mantra.
What does that mantra sound like?
When approaching a dialogue, remind yourself that the goal is transmission of meaning, not academic perfection. The mantra is, be clear, be audible, and be engaged.
So focus on the nonverbals too.
Yes, focus on active listening, making appropriate eye contact, and nodding to show comprehension. Nonverbal cues carry enormous weight in professional settings. If you transmit confidence through demeanor, minor linguistic errors are often overlooked entirely.
So if I accidentally use the wrong tense, but my volume is good, my tone is engaging, and I clearly communicate the goal, the interaction is successful.
Absolutely. Think about your native speaker colleagues. They make mistakes all the time.
That's true.
The difference is they deliver them with confidence. Focus on the substance and let the small talk habits we just discussed become automated.
Okay, we move now to group dynamics, how to command the room and participate effectively in meetings.
This requires specialized vocabulary and diplomatic strategies because the audience is expanded and the stakes are often higher than in an email exchange.
Let's start with how the meeting is typically opened by the person chairing it. What are the standard phrases they use to signal that the discussion is officially beginning?
Beyond the obvious "good morning, everyone," the chair uses clear idioms to signal initiation, moving the group from social chat to task execution.
Okay.
The source notes highlight, "Let's get the ball rolling," which is the most classic idiom. Alternatives include, "Let's dive into the agenda," "Shall we kick things off?" or "If everyone's here, let's make a start."
This language clearly signals, stop the small talk, we are starting now. Got it. Now, if I'm an attendee and I need to contribute an update or introduce a new topic, how do I professionally intervene and take the floor without being seen as disruptive?
You need phrases that claim attention without demanding it. You provide the framing first, signaling your intention clearly.
So what does that sound like?
Standard professional phrases for taking the floor include, "Today, I'd like to address," or "I have an update regarding," followed by the specific topic.
So I wouldn't just launch into the update itself. I provide the context first to frame the intervention. For example, I have an update regarding the project trajectory and potential budget concerns.
Exactly. This is sophisticated meeting etiquette. It allows the listeners to mentally prepare for the topic shift and shows that you are structuring your contribution deliberately.
What are some other phrases?
You can also use phrases to introduce a novel point. "I wanted to raise a quick point concerning X," or "Before we move on, I'd like to interject with a related thought." These are courteous ways to insert yourself into the flow.
And what if I want to simply build on what someone else just said?
That's a great collaborative strategy. You use phrases like, "to piggyback on Name's point," or "building on what Name just mentioned," I also think.
So you're validating them first.
Yes, this signals collaboration and reinforces the colleague's contribution while introducing your own idea.
Grouped discussions are defined by the delicate interplay of consensus and productive conflict.
They are.
Let's look at the vocabulary for agreement first concurrence. How do we reinforce a colleague's point professionally and emphatically?
We need more than just yes. We need phrases that signal deep alignment and support, building team cohesion.
The sources provide excellent, varied vocabulary for this.
They do. You can use strong formal agreement, "I second that," or "That is absolutely correct."
Okay.
For validation and support. That's a very valid point. Or, "I am in complete agreement with that assessment." And to show depth of thought, "I'm inclined to agree," as that reinforces our own findings on the matter. A strong informal phrase is simply "spot on." These phrases aren't just agreeing. They are actively validating the person who spoke, which is crucial for building a collaborative environment.
It is.
But what happens when we disagree? This requires true diplomatic finesse because you must challenge the idea without alienating the person.
Diplomatic dissent is the pinnacle of professional communication skill. The guiding principle here, which must be strictly adhered to, is to challenge the idea.
Never the person.
Exactly. The moment you make it personal, the conversation becomes adversarial and unproductive.
So we need phrases that introduce disagreement with linguistic cushioning, acknowledging their perspective before introducing the alternative.
We use phrases that create a buffer. For instance, "I see your point, however, I worry about the implication for the timeline."
Right.
Or, "I understand your perspective, but I believe we should also consider the external risks." A classic technique is the agree but propose sequence.
Tell me more about that.
That's an interesting approach, but have we considered the resource allocation implications if we choose that path? That linguistic cushioning, "I see your point," or "that's interesting," is what prevents the meeting from becoming adversarial. It allows for robust debate while ensuring everyone feels respected.
You can also use the slightly more formal method of indirect questioning to introduce dissent.
How so?
Could we perhaps explore an alternative approach that integrates X, or to play devil's advocate for a moment, which is a common idiom used to signal that you are challenging the idea for the sake of rigorous testing, not personal opposition.
In the heat of discussion, sometimes points are rushed, data is confusing, or the speaker is simply moving too quickly. We need to normalize seeking clarification.
Yes.
As we discussed earlier, many professionals, especially those focused on language acquisition, worry that seeking clarification makes them seem weak or inattentive.
On the contrary, our sources emphasize that seeking clarification is a sign of engagement.
Right.
Feigning understanding is a far greater professional risk than pausing to ensure you have the correct information. The goal is to maximize understanding, not to maintain a facade of perfection.
What are the professional phrases for interjecting to ask for that clarification?
Use soft interjections and place the blame for the confusion on the concept, not yourself. For example, apologies. Could you elaborate on that last point? I want to ensure I fully grasp the concept.
Okay.
Or, just to confirm my understanding, are we saying X or Y? If the speaker is moving too quickly, you use the diplomatic model verb structure. I apologize, but could you please speak a little more slowly?
Placing the onus on fully grasping the concept is a very diplomatic way of saying, I need you to rephrase that.
It is. It's always courteous and keeps the focus where it belongs, on the information itself.
Okay.
Finally, we address the dreaded hard stop. You simply must leave a meeting before it concludes.
How do we excuse ourselves gracefully and professionally, avoiding the abrupt, I have to go?
In the corporate world, I have to go is considered abrupt and signals that your immediate task is more important than the meeting itself. We use the standardized corporate terminology for excusing oneself prematurely, often referred to as a hard stop.
And what does that look like in practice?
The key is to signal your departure before it happens and apologize for the inconvenience. You should state, apologies everyone, I have a hard stop scheduled in 5 minutes, so I will need to drop off shortly.
So you give them a heads up.
Yes. When the time comes, you state, apologies, I have a hard stop for another engagement. Other formal excuses include, sorry, I must step out for a prior commitment, or I'm afraid I'll have to excuse myself now, but I will review the minutes afterward.
Using the term hard stop instantly communicates professionalism and minimizes the need for further explanation because it signals a non-negotiable pre-scheduled obligation.
Exactly.
And the promise to review the minutes reinforces your commitment to the meeting's outcome, even though you are leaving early.
Exactly. It shows accountability and respect. We have covered the entire landscape, from the single-word email salutation all the way to commanding a room during a crucial, dynamic discussion.
That truly was a comprehensive deep dive into the very substance of high-stakes professional communication. To bring this all home, let's synthesize the core principles we've distilled from these excellent sources. This is the concise, high-value toolkit you need to walk away with.
If you remember nothing else, remember these 3 principles derived directly from our extensive analysis today. They are the keys to the gold standard.
Number 1, clarity is paramount. Especially in written communication, use precise language and structure to avoid any potential for misinterpretation.
Right. Convoluted sentences and ambiguous phrasing waste valuable time and breed errors.
Number 2, courtesy is achieved through diplomacy.
This means actively utilizing modal verbs, specifically could and would in all requests. That slight grammatical modification is the difference between being perceived as demanding and being perceived as collegiate.
And number 3, efficiency is appreciated, but never at the expense of tone.
Yes. Get to the point quickly, whether in a brief response to a manager or in the body of an email, but ensure the tone, through appropriate pleasantries, diplomatic buffers, and clear sign-offs, is always polite.
Mastering these conventions allows you to navigate the professional environment smoothly, efficiently, and most importantly, collegiately.
You are positioning yourself not just as a competent worker, but as skilled communicator.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Our entire discussion today revealed that professional communication is about more than just transmitting information. It actively shapes perceptions of the corporate culture. The way you draft an email, respond to a request, or dissent in a meeting signals, for instance, the team is cohesive, or the corporate culture here is collaborative and welcoming.
Yes, your personal communication style is a building block of organizational culture.
So if your communication style, from the email salutation to the meeting dissent, consistently reflects polished professionalism. How does mastering these skills not only help you manage your tasks and advance your career, but actively reinforce and build the kind of cohesive, welcoming professional environment you want to work in?
It's a great question.
It moves the skill from personal benefit to cultural contribution. That's a concept for you to explore on your own.
Until next time.
Stay well informed.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is the place where we don't just, skim the surface of professional knowledge. We go deep.
That's right. We take a whole stack of curated material and we really distill it down to the absolute essentials.
And today, our goal is to arm you with a kind of C2 fluency that lets you navigate the modern office with total confidence. Zero guesswork.
Today's deep dive is, I think, critically important for anyone who wants to move from just being competent at their job to being genuinely influential. We're going beyond the basic business speak everyone knows. We're aiming for that high-level, sophisticated vocabulary that really defines professional success.
So our mission today is to give you that language toolkit for the really high-stakes moments.
Exactly, like how to deliver feedback so it actually lands gracefully. Or on the flip side, how to accept criticism without that that reflexive defensiveness we all have.
Yeah, that knee-jerk reaction. And also how to talk about uncertainty, because let's face it, the environment is always shifting. So the source material for this is a really comprehensive analysis from Mastering the Language of Professional Feedback and Workplace Productivity.
And this analysis, it's not just a dictionary. It's not just defining words.
No.
It's focused really heavily on practical, real-world professional dialogue. It gets into the unspoken rules, the tactical use of idioms, and the specific phrases that signal intent and, frankly, manage your political capital in the workplace.
That's a great way to put it, political capital. This really is a deep dive into nuance, isn't it?
It is. I mean, if you are getting ready for a performance review,
right,
or if you're managing a complex team, or you just want to make sure the precise intent of your message always lands,
yeah,
this is your shortcut.
Right. We're trying to give you the underlying corporate psychology, the understanding of what people really mean when they use these specific, sophisticated terms in a meeting.
And why they choose them over simpler words. It's really about understanding the language of consequence.
So if your goal is to gain knowledge quickly, improve your professional impact, and really unlock that next level of credibility, then let's get into it.
Let's do it.
And we're going to start not with some grand strategy, but with something fundamental, something cyclical that every single professional deals with every day. Managing your own energy.
Starting with that inevitable daily drop.
Okay, so we begin where, let's be honest, every professional day inevitably goes.
Downhill.
Downhill, exactly. Our bodies, our brains, they operate on cycles. And our sources spend a lot of time identifying this really ubiquitous workplace phenomenon, the afternoon slump.
It's so real.
It is. And we need to master the language that not only describes this state, but more importantly, the language that commands action against it.
And what's fascinating is how precisely the source material connects this common feeling of your brain just slowing down directly to our biology.
It's not just in your head.
Not at all. It points out that the afternoon slump isn't just, laziness or because you had a big sandwich for lunch.
Right.
It's a predictable crash in our circadian rhythms. It typically hits hard somewhere between, say, 2:47 and 3:30 p.m.
That's the witching hour.
It is.
Yeah.
Your cortisol levels drop, your core body temperature actually dips a little bit, and your brain's executive function. It just slows way down.
That 3 p.m. moment is, it's almost a running joke in the corporate world, isn't it? It's that point where your brain feels like it needs double the energy just to read an email.
Yes.
And the source gives us this perfect, visceral C2 level idiom to describe that feeling, that sudden energy depletion and mental fog.
Hitting a wall.
Exactly. Hitting a wall. Why is that phrase so effective?
Well, hitting a wall is brilliant because it's not gradual. It doesn't imply you're just, slowing down a bit like a car running out of gas. It captures the sudden, absolute stop of your cognitive momentum. It's like you're moving forward and then, bam, you just can't go any further.
You stop abruptly, physically, mentally. You just can't sustain the processing speed you had that morning.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
And a professional who uses that term is subtly communicating a genuine resource constraint.
Yeah.
They're basically saying, I've maxed out my available bandwidth for high-effort tasks right now.
Right. It's not an excuse. It's an assessment.
Yeah.
And the high-level professional sees this moment not as a reason to stop, but as a challenge to overcome.
Yes.
So What is the required professional response when you hit a wall and you feel that afternoon slump coming on? Our sources are really clear on this. The obligation is to power through.
Power through. It's such an active phrase. It's the linguistic expression of your professional commitment overcoming your physical reality.
I like that. Overcoming physical reality.
It means you continue the task, you maintain your level of output despite the difficulty, despite the fatigue or the cognitive resistance.
And in a high-performance environment, saying you need to power through is a crucial signal, isn't it? It signals resilience, a commitment to the deadline.
And an ability to manage your own resources effectively. It links directly to that concept you mentioned, bandwidth. If hitting a wall is the acknowledgement that your bandwidth is depleted, then powering through is the commitment to tap into your reserve capacity.
And that distinction is so important for this C2 level of vocabulary. You're demonstrating to your team, to your superiors, that you are in control of your output.
You manage your energy. You don't let your energy dictate your results.
Think about the alternative. The amateur says, "What? I'm too tired to focus right now."
Right. But the professional says something like, look, I've hit a wall, but I need to power through this final deliverable before I can wrap things up for the day.
That second statement is just packed with meaning. It shows self-awareness, resilience, and a plan for closure.
And that's the key. It's often that act of powering through those last few hours that allows you to get that sense of closure.
Which brings us to another really interesting and subtle contrast in daily workplace vocabulary. The difference between just casually stopping work and professionally closing your day.
Absolutely. The way we signal that we're done for the day communicates a lot about our respect for the work process and for our colleagues.
So the source gives us the classic, very common phrase first. Call it a day.
Yeah, call it a day. Very straightforward.
It just means you're stopping work now, it's clean, everyone understands it, and in a lot of casual settings, it's perfectly fine.
But you can level up. Compare that to the slightly more nuanced, more professional phrase. Wrap things up.
Wrap things up. It feels different. It sounds more intentional.
It's an entirely different strategic move. It elevates the professionalism because it implies intentional finality, organization, a prepared handoff for the next morning.
So when you tell your team or your boss that you're going to wrap things up, you're communicating that you're not just, abandoning your desk because the clock struck 5.
Exactly. You're not just stopping.
You're communicating action, not cessation.
Precisely. You're confirming that you are finishing the final, immediate tasks required for a proper close. You're closing out your emails, organizing your digital files, maybe documenting your progress, and setting a clear priority list for tomorrow.
So it's not just physical tidiness, it's intellectual closure.
It is.
I kind of think of it as the difference between just hitting save on a single document versus doing a full systematic review of your dashboard before you log off.
That's a great analogy.
If you just say, I'm calling it a day, your team might wonder if you left something hanging, an open loop.
But saying, I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes wrapping things up, communicates that you are achieving a proper end state for the workday. You're ensuring maximum efficiency for whoever might need to pick up your work tomorrow.
That really is the key distinction for C2 mastery. Calling it a day is about the clock.
Wrapping things up is about the process. It's about the documentation and the professional handover. It also speaks to managing the expectations of your superior, which is a small but important part of what we'll later call managing up.
You're signaling that your work is secure until the next morning. It's like the linguistic bow you tie around the day's efforts.
The perfect way to put it.
And that need for closure, for knowing exactly how to wrap things up, is so critical because if you don't manage your own communication, you'll inevitably have to manage someone else's expectations. And that often happens in the very challenging area of performance assessment, which brings us directly to the minefield of giving constructive feedback.
Okay, this is where the stakes get very high.
Very high. Because we're not talking about spreadsheets anymore. We're talking about competence, effort, pride. It's profoundly personal.
So the first strategic move, according to our sources, is establishing the fundamental difference between genuine support and just plain negativity.
Right. We have to have a crystal clear working definition of criticism versus constructive feedback.
And the source material really emphasizes that the core difference lies almost entirely in two things: intent and scope.
Let's unpack the strategic implications of intent first. If you're just criticizing, your focus is usually pretty narrow. You're targeting a failure, a weakness.
And to the person receiving it, it can often feel personal, punitive even. The result is almost always defensiveness and a damaged relationship.
But constructive feedback, on the other hand, has to have one single goal.
And that goal is to build up the recipient, to improve the outcome of the project or the future performance of that individual.
The focus is on the delivery, the context, and crucially, a solution.
Exactly. If the person receiving the feedback can't clearly see how this critique is going to lead to better results or an improved process, then it just crosses the line. It becomes mere criticism.
So the C2 professional always frames their critique within the larger context of, say, resource allocation or overall project success.
That's the key. And because of that, that inherent human tendency to immediately throw up our defenses when we hear critique, the method of communication is essential.
Right. To make sure the message is actually received and acted on. Which brings us to a very detailed, though sometimes controversial, technique. The sandwich method.
The sandwich method, yes. Our source material analyzes this heavily. It's a strategic framework designed specifically to make difficult information more palatable.
You're cushioning the emotional blow.
You're managing the psychological impact of the critique by surrounding it with positive context.
So it's that famous three-part structure. You start with something complimentary.
The top slice of bread.
Then you insert the critical element.
A meat. The actual point you need to make.
And you finish with another complimentary piece of feedback. Positive reinforcement. The bottom slice of bread.
The strategy here is all based on psychological pacing. The theory is that people are more likely to register and accept the critique if they first hear genuine praise. It lowers their defenses, validates their effort.
So they can then process the negative point knowing that the overall assessment of their contribution is still positive.
Right. Let's walk through the source's practical example. Let's say we're reviewing a proposal that's going to a client.
Okay, so part 1, praise the data analysis. You say something like, the strategic insights you pulled in the introduction were excellent. You clearly have a deep understanding of the market.
That's solid factual praise. It's specific. Then comes the critique. The source used an example where a manager, David, noted the proposal's formatting was a bit lackluster.
Okay, and here is a C2 vocabulary nugget we absolutely have to dissect. Lackluster. Why is that word, or a similar word like subpar, so much better than just saying the formatting was boring or messy?
It's a sophisticated choice because it depersonalizes the critique.
How so?
Lackluster means lacking in vitality or shine or force. It's a polite, objective softening of a harsh assessment. When you describe the formatting as lackluster, you're assessing the presentation quality objectively.
Not the person's effort or their competence.
Exactly. It frames the required change as adding polish or refinement, rather than correcting a fundamental mistake.
Yeah.
That is essential for professional feedback.
So it shifts the problem from you failed at design to this document needs a higher level of polish to meet our client standards.
Precisely. And then you have the conclusion. You re-emphasize the positive. Maybe you note that the actionable takeaways in the report or the budget forecast were really strong.
Now, the source was also careful to point out the pitfalls here because this method can backfire.
Oh, absolutely. The primary way the sandwich method fails is when the praise, the bread, is artificial or non-specific, what we call fluff.
Great job on the report. By the way, the whole thing is wrong, but you have a great attitude.
Exactly. If the recipient thinks the compliment is insincere, they immediately know the critique is coming, and they just dismiss the entire framework as manipulative.
So the C2 professional has to ensure the praise is specific, genuine, and recent.
That's the non-negotiable part. And the source does imply alternatives. For example, some really high-performing teams prefer something more direct, like the SBI model.
SBI.
Situation, behavior, impact.
Yeah.
It's much more direct, less cushioned. It really relies on a high level of shared professional maturity.
Give me an example.
In yesterday's meeting situation, you interrupted the client twice behavior, which made us lose momentum on the pricing discussion impact.
Wow, okay. Very direct. No sandwich there.
No sandwich. And that directness has its place, especially in environments where trust is high and time is scarce. But the sandwich method, when you execute it with genuine praise, is still a really powerful tool for softening the blow, especially with junior staff or teams where you're still building that relational capital.
It keeps the focus on the project's success, not a personal failure.
Right.
Okay, now let's move to a situation that requires even more linguistic care. Addressing a really profound performance gap. A colleague who is fundamentally not pulling their weight.
This is a tough one. This isn't about formatting anymore. This is about chronic underperformance. It's a strain on the entire team's resource allocation.
And this requires language that manages risk and avoids immediate conflict.
This is where we have to emphasize the strategic imperative of using I statements over you statements.
This might be the single most important rule for maintaining professional relationships when you're discussing sensitive issues.
I believe it is. When you use the you statement, you're assigning blame immediately. You are late. You failed to deliver. It just triggers an instant defensive response.
So give us that specific textbook contrast from the source.
Okay, instead of the accusatory, you are late with the files, which basically forces the other person to either admit they failed or argue back.
Yeah, there's no way out.
You rephrase it. You say, I am concerned that the delay with the files might impact our deadline.
Wow. That simple shift is genuinely profound in a political environment. How does that change the dynamic strategically?
It does two things beautifully. First, you're expressing your own internal state. I am concerned. I am worried. That's undeniable. It's your feeling.
Okay.
Second, and this is more important, it shifts the focus away from the person's failure and onto the project's impact, the shared outcome.
So instead of demanding an excuse for why they were late in the past, you're now demanding a solution for the future deadline.
Exactly. The focus immediately moves to problem solving. You're inviting the listener to solve the problem with you, rather than making them fight against your accusation.
It encourages immediate cooperation.
Which is paramount when you're dealing with these high-risk scenarios, like consistent underperformance that just drains the whole team's bandwidth.
But let's play devil's advocate here. Let's address the challenge. What if the issue is so urgent or the mistake is so egregious that saying I am concerned just feels too weak, too passive?
That's the tension. The C2 professional understands that I statements are the default mechanism for preserving relationships and for documentation safety.
Ah, documentation.
Yes. If the situation is an emergency, as we'll touch on later, you might need that directness. But when you're addressing a chronic issue, the I statement strategy is designed to build a documented record.
How so?
If you state, I am concerned this is impacting the team's capacity, and then the performance doesn't improve, your next, more formal conversation can reference the specific impact you noted previously. It makes the conversation entirely objective and non-personal. It prepares the ground for potential HR involvement by focusing on measurable outcomes, not feelings.
That's very strategic. And that brings us to the formal language that's required in that kind of documentation. Speaking of formal reviews, let's talk about the standard HR-friendly term for any kind of shortcoming or weakness.
Ah, yes, the polished corporate euphemism. It's a required element in any formal performance review or, performance improvement plan.
The phrase is area for improvement.
That phrase is a hallmark of C2 workplace language. It's the officially sanctioned term for addressing a weakness, a shortcoming, or a failure. You never write, your weakness is X.
You structure the dialogue and the documentation to say, X is an area for improvement.
And its purpose is crystal clear and very strategic. It serves to maintain documentation standards while preventing any formal communication from sounding hostile or punitive.
Which is critical for legal compliance and risk management.
It frames every weakness not as a permanent failure, but as a temporary state that requires development. Even when the underlying performance is negative, the language itself stays future-focused and positive.
So we've covered the sophisticated ways of delivering critique. Now let's flip the script. Let's talk about how a high-level professional receives that feedback.
Because responding poorly can instantly undermine your competence, no matter how good your past work was.
This section, I think, requires a huge amount of emotional maturity. It asks us to conquer that really deep-seated, totally human impulse.
The natural reaction.
The natural reaction to get defensive. As soon as someone points out a flaw in your work, that first impulse is always to excuse it, explain it away, or blame some external factor.
The source mentions that perfect internal monologue we all have, wanting to just snap back with, I didn't have time, the deadline was insane.
Yes.
That instinctive response is the enemy of professional growth. The C2 professional has to learn to override that impulse. And the key is one word: objectivity.
Objectivity. Which means detaching your ego from your output.
Exactly. The report, the proposal, the product that is separate from you, the professional. The feedback is about the deliverable, not your inherent worth as a person or your commitment to the job.
And if you think about it this way, your immediate defensive reaction costs you political capital.
A huge amount.
Yeah.
It makes the person giving you the feedback hesitant to ever help you again.
Yeah.
And it signals a lack of maturity. So the necessity of remaining objective is just paramount.
You have to demonstrate that you can process challenging information without letting your emotional response cloud your judgment.
And that necessity leads us directly to the C2 vocabulary you need to show immediate acceptance and professionalism, even if you are, internally bristling a bit.
Okay, let's break down the first key phrase. This one is globally recognized as C2, especially in project management, consulting,
And cross-cultural communication, definitely. The phrase is, I will take that on board for the next iteration.
Take it on board. I hear this constantly in high-level environments. It feels so much stronger than just saying, okay, or I hear you.
Because it's a commitment phrase. Take it on board means to formally accept, internalize, and commit to acting upon a new idea, a new instruction, or a piece of criticism.
So when you use this phrase, you're signaling that the feedback has been processed, it's been validated, and it's now integrated into your strategic plan moving forward.
And adding for the next iteration is also key. It reinforces that this is all about continuous improvement and project phases. It's not just a desperate, immediate scramble to fix one error.
It communicates responsiveness, foresight, a disciplined workflow. You're assuring your manager that their feedback isn't lost in the ether. It's now a scheduled part of the project's evolution.
It's an efficient use of their input. Now, what if the mistake was genuinely minor, something you just missed because you were moving fast or had a high volume of work?
This is where we need that powerful phrase that helps you save face while still accepting full responsibility.
The phrase is oversight. The professional in the source material used it perfectly. The formatting issue was an oversight on my part.
This is tactical language at its absolute best.
It is, because oversight defines the mistake as an unintentional error. It was caused by simply not noticing something, maybe due to a high workload, rather than a lack of skill or a fundamental capability.
And crucially, when it's documented in a performance file, an oversight is treated very differently from, say, demonstrated incompetence.
Worlds apart.
I love that analysis. It lets you quickly accept the accountability, which is totally non-negotiable, without undermining your perceived professional competence in the core task.
It basically says, I missed this one thing, not I couldn't handle the complexity of the job.
It's a mechanism for protecting your professional reputation, your political capital. You accept the mistake, but you frame it as an exception, not a pattern.
So once you've acknowledged the mistake, the final requirement is to show your commitment to fixing it.
The professional response demands a clear action plan. And for this, we move to a formal, decisive verb, rectify.
Rectify. It means to make something right, to correct an error, or to remedy a situation. It's formal, authoritative language. It conveys decisiveness and precision.
You're not just going to fix the mistake, you're going to rectify the situation.
The term is often found in formal compliance documents and action plans for a reason. It implies a structured, systematic correction.
So the full professional follow-up is stating that clear commitment. You make sure both your acceptance of the feedback and your plan for correction are clear. I understand the need for higher polish, and I will rectify the formatting before the end of the day.
And with that one sentence, you've moved the conversation from the past, which was the mistake, to the present, the fix, and the future, the next iteration.
When you string that entire sequence together, staying objective, accepting the feedback by taking it on board, defining the error as an oversight, and committing to rectify it, you're engaging in a comprehensive process.
A process that we define as managing up.
Managing up is so much more than just, taking orders from your boss. It's the active process of handling communication, expectations, and perception with your superiors effectively.
It is, in my opinion, the most visible indicator of professional maturity. When you master receiving feedback with this vocabulary, you make your supervisor feel absolute confidence in your ability to handle issues, learn from mistakes, and deliver reliable outcomes.
You're demonstrating resilience and discipline. You're turning a moment of potential failure into a professional development opportunity.
And you're simultaneously reinforcing your competence and building your political capital with leadership.
That is the power of C2 communication. It structures an emotional response into a professional workflow. You don't just sound smart, you operate efficiently and strategically, especially under pressure.
What stands out to me here is that this vocabulary is fundamentally about risk management.
How so?
You're mitigating the professional risk associated with making an error, both for yourself and for the entire project.
Okay, we've covered managing our energy and managing relationships through feedback. Let's pivot now to the practical language we need for planning. when everything seems to be, well, unstable.
The modern business landscape is just defined by volatility, isn't it? Schedules are fluid, commitments shift, projects pivot constantly.
All the time. So a major component of C2 fluency is having terms ready that can express that ambiguity and flexibility without making you sound disorganized or non-committal.
This is so crucial, especially for managing expectations across global teams. If you speak too definitively, you risk overcommitting, which damages your reputation and your team's bandwidth.
But if you speak too vaguely, you risk sounding like you're incapable of making a plan.
So we need that perfect middle ground, where we communicate possibility rather than a concrete promise.
The first idiom we need for this, for expressing something that is wholly unfixed, often because of external dependencies, is up in the air.
Up in the air. It's such a beautifully visual idiom. It means uncertain or undecided. The decision is literally suspended. It hasn't landed yet. It's not grounded in reality.
And the source notes that professionals use this when a necessary piece of information hasn't been secured yet. Like you're waiting on external funding or regulatory approval or just a senior executive's availability.
And the strategic use of this phrase is all about managing timelines. It's a formal way of acknowledging that while you intend to act, external factors mean the timeline is completely unstable right now.
You're managing the other person's expectation of immediacy. You're buying yourself time to gather more information.
And you're communicating that you recognize the risk, not that you're just ignoring the schedule.
So when a schedule is definitively up in the air, the professional response is rarely to just sit and wait passively.
No, you have to suggest a provisional plan. Which leads us to the crucial phrasal verb, pencil something in.
I love the deliberate analog metaphor in this phrase, pencil something in. The definition is simple: to make a provisional or tentative appointment that can be changed later with minimal friction.
It's the visual contrast that gives it its power and its C2 status. You're not writing the commitment in ink.
Right, which would imply it's fixed, confirmed, a contractual obligation.
You're writing it in pencil. You're signaling flexibility, ease of erasure, and a lack of final guaranteed commitment. It implies good faith planning, but very low contractual obligation until you get that explicit confirmation.
This is so vital for protecting your team's bandwidth. If you ink in a 3-hour meeting, your team allocates and dedicates resources based on that fixed time.
But if you pencil it in, they hold the space, but they know they should stay flexible, ready to pivot to other tasks if that time slot shifts.
It's like a linguistic handshake that says, we know this needs to happen, and here's when we can aim for it, but be ready for external factors to move it.
And that whole concept of flexibility and provisional planning is captured perfectly by one strategic adjective: tentative.
Tentative, meaning subject to confirmation, conditional, or not certain. If you pencil in a slot, that meeting or that deliverable timeline is tentative.
And the ability to fluently deploy all these terms, up in the air, pencil something in, tentative, it reflects a high-level professional's recognition that, as the source puts it, nothing in business seems 100% certain.
This vocabulary isn't just descriptive, it's proactively agile.
Yes, it allows professionals to move forward with planning and resource allocation, even with incomplete information. And that is the very definition of operational agility in a complex environment.
So instead of saying, I have no idea when the meeting is going to be, which just signals a lack of control,
the C2 professional says, my schedule is currently up in there pending the client's final sign-off, but let's pencil in a tentative planning session for Thursday at 2:00 p.m.
It's a completely different level of communication mastery. It shows you're in control, even of the chaos, and that you respect the other person's time.
You're signaling that you're organized enough to project a plan, but you're sophisticated enough to recognize the volatility of the professional landscape. This is critical for managing large-scale operations where those external dependencies are a constant threat.
You're basically using C2 language to manage risk exposure.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's wrap up our look at professional performance by focusing on maybe the most critical element of sustained success: managing your bandwidth and avoiding total professional collapse.
We started the day talking about the afternoon slump, which is a minor daily energy cycle.
Right.
But if we fail to manage our professional boundaries, that daily cycle can escalate into something much more damaging and chronic.
Which brings us to the very dramatic idiom for chronic overworking and resource depletion: burn the candle at both ends.
That phrase paints such a stark visual image: absolute, unsustainable self-depletion. The definition, as the source gives it, is working late into the night and then getting up early in the morning.
You're effectively consuming your finite personal and cognitive resources from both sides at the same time.
It's a metaphor for an extreme, unsustainable workload that violates the principle of balanced resource allocation for yourself.
And what is the inevitable recognized consequence of perpetually burning the candle at both ends?
The consequence, which has really become a formal professional concept now, not just a complaint, is burnout.
Our audience will know the dictionary definition of burnout, but the C2 context here is crucial.
It is. Burnout is a strategic risk for any professional and for any organization. It's a state of physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion that leads to a significant reduction in performance, cynicism, and reduced efficacy.
And crucially, the high-level professional isn't just worried about their own burnout. They recognize they have a professional obligation to manage the bandwidth of their subordinates and their peers to prevent organizational burnout.
A true C2 environment is one where burnout is seen as a failure of resource management, not a badge of honor.
Right. Look how busy I am is not the goal.
Not at all. And the source material stresses that if you manage people, you have to be alert to the language of burnout. Not just the explicit complaints, but the implicit signals.
Like what?
A person who constantly says their schedule is tentative because they're just too busy, or someone who frequently says they've hit a wall, might be on the path to burnout. And the professional response requires intervention.
Which means our professional vocabulary must also include terms for recovery and restoration. The necessary intentional response to avoiding burnout is the verb unwind.
Unwind. It means to relax, to de-stress, to release tension after a period of intense effort. It is the linguistic opposite of powering through.
That's a great way to think about it.
If powering through is that tactical surge of energy you need to finish a task, then unwinding is the strategic decompression you need to ensure future performance is even possible.
And the source material is really emphatic that this is not just optional self-care. It's an essential part of the high-performance professional equation.
It is. If you fail to incorporate intentional time to unwind, the exhaustion will eventually compel it, and often violently, in the form of a breakdown or a chronic illness.
So the professional who communicates that they need to unwind is signaling that they are managing their career for the long term.
It connects all the way back to our very first section on energy management. Recognizing the daily slump requires the ability to power through.
Right.
But recognizing the risk of chronic overwork requires the commitment to unwind. They are two sides of the same coin of sustainable productivity and professional bandwidth management.
Using the term unwind professionally signals that you recognize and respect the necessity of managing your mental reserves.
Which ultimately makes you a more reliable long-term resource for the organization.
It's the ultimate professional paradox, isn't it? To perform at a high level consistently, you have to become proficient and deliberate at relaxing at a high level.
That deliberate focus is the C2 application of work-life balance. #outro.
Wow. This has been an incredibly dense and, I think, comprehensive deep dive. We have covered a massive amount of ground, a full professional cycle of communication.
We really have. We started with the daily physical reality of the afternoon slump.
To the commitment to power through it, and we mastered the precise language of professional closure with wrap things up.
Then we spent a lot of time meticulously analyzing the art of feedback, distinguishing between mere criticism and truly constructive guidance.
We learned how to soften the blow with sophisticated language like lackluster, and how to shift blame to shared impact using those strategic I statements.
And crucially, we internalized the language of professional acceptance and accountability.
Learning how to signal commitment by taking things on board.
Defining minor errors as an oversight to protect our professional standing.
And committing to rectify the situation, all within that framework of active managing up.
Finally, we armed ourselves with the vocabulary of planning and flexibility, recognizing when schedules are legitimately up in the air,
and using the strategically safe term tentative whenever we pencil something in.
And we wrapped it all up by acknowledging the need to take a break from perpetually burning the candle at both ends so we can intentionally unwind and maintain our overall bandwidth.
So if your head is spinning right now, that is a good thing. That's the feeling of new neural pathways forming. You haven't just memorized a list of vocabulary, you've hopefully grasped the underlying strategic psychology of high-level communication. Every phrase we talked about is a tool that lets you manage expectations, mitigate risk, protect your reputation, and conserve your own political capital and resources.
I think the core takeaway here is the functional value of this C2 language in the corporate jungle. These precise terms let you communicate complex ideas and delicate emotional or performance issues with maximum economy and accuracy.
Yeah.
Using oversight instead of mistake is a tactical advantage in your documentation. Using I am concerned instead of you are late is a strategic advantage in your relationship management. This is actionable, high-impact knowledge.
So our encouragement to you, the learner, is simple. Don't let this knowledge just sit there passively. Actively integrate these phrases into your professional dialogue this week.
Try it. Use I will take that on board in your next meeting. Or intentionally structure your next difficult email to use I statements when you're addressing a performance issue.
Make this language a part of your daily professional toolkit.
And as we conclude this deep dive, let's leave you with one final provocative thought. It builds on that tension we talked about between politeness and immediate efficacy back in Section 2.
Okay.
We established that the professional mandate is restraint. Using I statements, using polished language to preserve relationships and document things objectively.
That's the rule for long-term strategic success.
But consider this tension. If the ultimate goal of communication in a crisis is maximal, immediate impact and ensuring swift compliance, let's say addressing an immediate safety violation, stopping a fraudulent transaction, or correcting a critical, irreversible technical error.
High stakes, high urgency moments.
Exactly. Is there ever a time when dropping the polished language, bypassing the sandwich method, and using simple, direct, non-negotiable you statements is actually the more effective professional choice?
Despite the short-term relational risk and the potential political cost.
That is the ultimate question of tactical ethics versus strategic relationship building. When the chips are down, does efficiency trump nuance?
Something for you to mull over as you deploy your newly mastered C2 vocabulary. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.
Until next time, keep refining your professional voice and your strategic bandwidth.